Welcome to this video, round 4 action of the candidates tournament in Khanty-Mansisk, and we have Mamedyarov against Andreikin. This game will be examined in this video. Yeah, looking at the names and the tournament standing, this doesn't really sound like a totally great game. Mamedyarov is on -2 and Andreikin on -1, so they both have somewhat disappointing tournament. They both certainly hoped for more, despite the fact that they are not exactly favorites in the field. But still, if you have prepared for a long time, which they certainly did, you sort of have more hopes for your performance than being on the bottom end of the tournament table. Okay, let's see what happens. Mamedyarov played d4, and he's got the third times white in this tournament, which does not really make his performance look any better, to be honest. And he gets Slav again in the third game. At this third time he faces the Slav defense. Really, it's really a lot. I mean, Andreikin is a flexible player. He plays many lines against d4. And it's again a Slav. Let's see what Mamedyarov is coming up this time. Played knight c3. He had played 2 times already in this tournament. He played once this line, drawing against Topalov, and queen c2, losing against Arland. And now he's going for something entirely different, starting with knight c3. Yeah, that's an interesting move order that has some points in comparison with knight f3. One point is that after knight f6, very normal move, there is the move e3, which was Mamedyarov's choice actually. The idea is now that you have gone into this e3 type of systems, where you actually make it more difficult for black to play bishop f5. Some time ago I would have said that instead of more difficult, to almost prevent the move, but nowadays it's not so clear. What I'm getting at is that here bishop f5 is answered by the capture and queen b3. And for years it was thought that black is in bad shape here. b7 is hanging and d5 is hanging. So a move like queen b6, normal looking, just loses a pawn. So, sorry, this was stupid. So bishop f5, takes. So it was thought that black actually must play bishop c8 all the way back. And this is not terribly exciting. But then, with the help of modern analysis engines, it was found out that knight c6 is actually an interesting move, sacrificing a pawn, funny enough with a retreat to d7. This seems to be a sufficient compensation for black, and was even recommended in this recently released book by famous author and theoretician Boris Avrukh. So this is a big sign of approval if he thinks that this is a decent line. So bishop f5 is an interesting move to go nowadays. And this is entirely different to the position where the knight is on f3, because there the pressure on d5 is not so effective. Yeah, okay, Andreikin played a6. This is also well known. Knight f3, and here he played e6. Yeah, we have a very flexible position here. Black has other ways to go. We are in the Chebanenko Slav now, characterized by this a6 move. The original Chebanenko move is actually b5, which has lost some of its popularity, I believe, mostly because after c5 white seems to retain slight pressure. There also is bishop f5, which is a good move, played by Carlsen amongst others, and also recommended by Avrukh in the book that I was referring to. An important point of the whole setup with a6 is that after a move like queen b3, black actually has this funky rook move, It's very good actually. Rook a7 to cover the pawn. It looks a bit strange, I know, but black very often will just repair this issue by later covering a b7 with the queen, for example, and then retreating the rook again. Note that the queen on b3 is also not ideal, as sometimes you want the b pawn in the action. But this didn't happen. Andreikin played a6, so many alternatives. a3. e6, by the way, was played by Arnold in his World Championship match against Gelfand a couple of times. Also an interesting move. Yeah, a3 now by Mamedyarov. This is rare, a really rare move. And after knight d7, played queen c2. Yeah, here Andreikin played, at least for me, a surprising move. He played queen c7. Here I thought that black would simply play the capture on c4. And I don't know the position, but I thought that this should be quite okay. And it seems that tournament practice confirms that this is a viable option. The idea is to quickly get going with b5 and c5. Let's say here, yeah, or a2, I don't know, and then c5, which is very similar to the Queen's Gambit accepted, this structure, but with the queen, white queen on c2. I don't really believe that white should have anything here. And it would have been interesting to see what idea Mamedyarov had prepared. He certainly prepared this line with a3 and queen c2. Maybe not specifically for Andreikin, but it's well known that well, Anand has played it in a World Championship match, this line, and it's always possible that this position might occur in any game in this tournament. So it would have been interesting, but Andreikin played, as mentioned, queen c7, and look, they both spent quite some time. Andreikin taking lots of time here, and queen c7. It feels a bit weird to me, but okay. Mamedyarov went for e4, a central strike, central play. This, in fact, has gotten more interesting now in the position after white has played a3. Very often after takes, no, sorry, I keep hitting this instead of this. After this, oh, sorry, in this position, very often black's standard counterplay is bishop b4. But now with a3 played, this obviously not possible. Black likes to exchange one pair of bishops, and well, that's not on anymore. He played c5 here to free his position, and well, white captured and took on c5. It's a bit difficult to play something else. You don't really want to do that because you develop black's bishop in one move. But how actually, what else to do? I mean, the problem is white wants to fianchetto, and if you start with g3, black is going to take, and well, this is just not helping in any way. Therefore, white captured, and after a5 went g3. a5, yeah, is a playable move, of course. This also was possible, but he probably didn't like the look of b4 and possibly c5. I understand that. So a5, g3, bishop c5. Yeah, black has weakened the b5 square a bit, but this is not relevant as the knight is so far away from it. Yeah, bishop g2, black castled, and white castled. Yeah, here we have a critical position. Andreikin now has a choice, or he has to address one important issue, and this is what to do against bishop to f4. This is the logical developing move that white maybe is going to play, and let's say you play bishop d7, just a normal move to complete development. I think then bishop f4 leads to a slight advantage for white. If black moves the queen, there's knight e5. And this is the issue. White wants to fight for this e5 square for a knight. And the knight on e5 in combination with the bishop is really yeah, a trump card for white. If you go back, you can play this, but it gives up even more time. Let's say here, here, and rook e1, intending knight e5. Even in a position like that, white is slightly more comfortable because of this very nice knight on e5. Black has, of course, a decent chances. It's not like he's lost or anything, but it always feels a bit uncomfortable to allow this knight to arrive on e5. He simply put an end to all that by playing e5 himself. That also, of course, has the benefit of allowing the light squared bishop to be developed. It looks perfectly normal, this move, but it has some implications that are far-reaching. White now played bishop g5, and maybe intends to take on f6 to ruin black's pawn structure. Yeah, Andreikin played rook a6 now to allow a possible recapture by the rook. And now rook a e1 was played, yeah, intensifying pressure on this pawn. The e5 pawn is something that white can easily attack, yeah, with the knight, the rook, and even with the queen soon enough. And this is why I was emphasizing that e5 is a far-reaching decision. If you look at what happens now, I played rook e8 and queen c3, mentioning that white yeah, intensifies the pressure. What is black's move now to avoid just losing a pawn? And this is the problem. It's very tricky now. You cannot really prevent white from spoiling your pawn structure with bishop f6, g takes f6. I mean, you can play knight d7 or think about that, but yeah, is this a good position? b4 and c5 coming, it just looks very clumsy. And well, if you defend like that, white can also take and get to this pawn structure. The problem, as usual, are not the pawns itself, that they are weak or something, but they are squares weakened, and this also applies to the game continuation, where Andreikin just played h6 and yeah, just let Mamedyarov take. So we have this pawn structure, which, of course, as mentioned, is leaving some weak squares, but in black's camp. But on the other hand, the position also has some qualities, black's position. He has a foothold in the center with this strong e5 pawn. His king is not in a big problem at the moment. I mean, white is not really positioned to drum up a quick kingside attack based on pieces. And yeah, well, white, of course, needs to be aware of black has the bishop pair, which is a long-term asset. So the position is maybe about equal. Maybe this is the fair evaluation. But I feel, and this applies through the upcoming part of the game, I feel it is easier for white to play, to be honest. I very much would prefer white here. I mean, it's still, you know, if you know my channel, you know, I have a terrible bishop pair addiction, no? But this is it feels like it's easier for white. White has some easier play that he can initiate. Let's look at the next couple of moves. b4 played, and oops, sorry, it was too quick. Bishop f8 was played. He also could have taken, but probably Andreikin thought, well, I can take anyway at any point on b4. So he just retreated to f8, which that was not good, which adds some protection, possibly for the king. And well, you don't really want to go to g7 unless you need to, but it's a possible way to defend the king. Black wants to pressurize still this queen side. So bishop f8 is a normal move. And now knight h4. Yeah, the knight does not really have a great square besides one. This is f5, of course. So knight h4 is perfectly logical. Now he took and played bishop to e6. Yeah, okay. c4 is attacked. So Mamedyarov advances c4, c5. Yeah, and here we come to an absolutely critical position. And this is one of those positions where I believe that black simply has a very difficult task in a practical game. It's a big difference if you look at this at home, maybe even assisted by a computer. But playing it over the board with limited time, it seems that black has some problems to solve. The computer is pretty much unimpressed. It's always about equal 0.2 for white. I don't know, nothing terribly special or frightening, but I'm not so sure really how black should defend now. What he does is he plays a very debatable move, I believe at least. He played the move b6. And after b6, white, of course, as c5 is attacked, advances to c6. And this means that with b6, black has just given white an enormous pawn on c6, a pass pawn. But he has got, of course, gotten some things in return. He has activated the f8 bishop, which now attacks the somewhat weak b4 pawn. And yeah, well, it's on c6, yeah, but it's not like white is promoting it to a queen quickly in the next couple of moves. So it's not 100% clear that b6 is a mistake, but I don't have a good feeling about this move, I must say. If you look at the further course of the game, you can invest really lots of time to analyze it. I have invested a bit of time, and it's not so clear to me how to correctly evaluate this b6 move. I just feel that it's making black's task more difficult than was necessary. At least I believe. My suggestion to not play b6 would and what am I suggesting is rook a to e8, just not move the b pawn. The idea is still to enter with the rook here activated on the a file, and just avoid to move the b pawn. Of course, the thing is, it's always under attack by this g2 bishop, so it's not like it's very comfortably sitting on b7. This is also one reason for b6, that black is not it's not worried, must not worry anymore about the b7 pawn. Yeah, well, in this line, if we continue for a bit, white can try many things. He can play prophylactic moves like rook b1. We will see some of that in the game. And after rook a3, maybe queen c2 to intend knight f5. Yeah. Or white can play much more directly with queen f3, attacking here and attacking here. The remarkable thing is that black can actually allow white to take on b7. Maybe in this line Andreikin wasn't trusting the position. It's very much possible. I think it's very difficult to play all this. Rook a3 is actually the key move. One simple point is that this blunders the queen, so white will take on b7, I guess. Otherwise it really didn't help very much. Yeah, white just takes it, and yeah, a possible line is this: takes, and now rook b8, which will regain the pawn. It looks really dangerous, to be honest, with the pawn. If white plays c6, black takes here, however, and it's not apparent how white is going to promote this pawn. I mean, this bishop on b7 is very much reduced to just to cover the pawn, and black very often will just play bishop d6 to cover the important c7 square. And of course there's also a bishop on e6, so you can almost never win with c7. Yeah, like this, black captures the bishop. This is actually a position that seems to be completely okay for black. At least when I was trying a bit with the computer, and I never got anywhere. It gives it as 0-0-0 anyway. And even I tried a bit, like getting the knight over, but never led to anything. It's just always a 0-0-0. I mean, it was a playable alternative to not play b6. Well, he did b6, c6, and now rook a4, attacking the pawn here. Instead of a rook a4, black also could have played here rook a8, but I'm not sure if it is an improvement actually. White probably again should prophylactically cover the b4 pawn, as there will be attacks coming. Yeah, and here, yeah, tricky. Maybe a move like b5 for black. b4, b5, I'm not sure that you want to see that. Now queen f3 and possibly queen e2 to cover, to attack b5 at the right moment. The computer is not so much impressed about all this. It gives many of those positions as about equal. But really, is it easy to play for black? I really don't know. I would have very much preferred white here. You have so many annoying looking ideas. Let's say also something like that might be interesting. Tending here, knight f5. Black quickly must get counterplay against this type of idea. Otherwise, white will be just much better. It's I don't know. I feel in a practical game, white is has a much easier job here. Okay, rook a4, rook to b1, and rook d8. Yeah, intending to activate here on d4. Yeah, queen f3. Just looking at the pawn here. Maybe white can grab it. And here he also could have played bishop e4. This was my idea when I was watching the game live. Sort of getting both pieces involved for f5 or the f5 square. It seems to be a decent alternative. It's not clear if it's any better or worse. In this complicated position, so if you have an idea, I'm always glad to not blunder too much. Can easily happen. Well, rook d4, queen f3. This was the idea that I had, and well, it seems playable. It seems like a playable, complicated position. Black can grab here, and here, interestingly enough, the computer wants to play, what does it want to play? Rook d1, I think. No, rook a1. Intending rook a8. Yeah, it's an interesting position, very unclear. In the game we played queen f3, which is okay, I believe. Rook to d4, activating the rook. And knight f5. This was the idea all along. You need to use the weakened squares. Yeah, black took this pawn, which seems right, seems correct. And now queen to h5, attacking the h6 pawn. Yeah, white is a pawn down, but he's got so yeah, his pieces are so active. Yeah, the queen here, the knight, the bishop is strong, and the rook might join the action soon. It's clear that white has an excellent compensation for the pawn. Okay, the queen is on h5. What did he do? He played king to h7, sensibly covering h6, rook d1, and queen c8. Yeah, note the clock times. They both were down to 13 minutes, and this is a no increment time control, so they have roughly 1 minute per move for the remaining 11 moves. Yeah, this is a tech term. You need to retreat. 93. Not a bad thing. This retreat, not a big problem or anything. Yeah, and here we have a very sorry, a very critical position where it seems that Andreikin made a mistake, but it's very, very tricky, this position. And in fact, I believe that both players here played a really good game. I mean, up to this point, if you check it with a computer, it is very complicated, and they didn't commit any substantial mistakes, at least nothing that that I could find, or the engine could find. You can always argue about some move being more accurate or something, but considering the complexity of the position, I think they did an excellent job. Yeah, here Andreikin played, as mentioned, f5, and this doesn't seem to be good, really. The computer recommends rook d4 as a defense, but it must be said that if you look at this position, this is something that the computer just believes to be equal, but play that over the board, it's not much fun, I can assure you that. Something like f5 and possibly knight f4 is just not fun to play for black. You have a pawn, but you don't have a particularly great king. White has good pieces, he has the c-pawn, and it's not clear what black's play is. This is easily defended, and it's not like you quickly can run with the b-pawn, as white has even direct attacking ideas. For example, just for example, something like that is an interesting way to play. Black captures, can take,
check,
and try to initiate an attack on the light squares. You still have excellent compensation. Yeah, well, he played f5. Rook d4 would have led to an unclear position. Let's call it that. But f5 seems to give white something substantial for the first time, and he found the right move. He found bishop d5. The idea being to capture and enter on the 7th. Just a very strong move. Yeah, black does not have much of an alternative to f4. He played f4, directly pushing the pawn. Yeah, the point is, of course, that if white now takes, queen takes, is still a very decent defense. Something like knight d5, rook c4 isn't clear at all. It's very tricky to play, but black is in perfectly acceptable shape here. Knight c2 is stronger. Rook a4, yeah, not much else. Rook a4, and now white played queen takes e5. So this pawn got lost, but it's not such a big deal, the pawn itself. The problem is concrete tactics. Bishop g7. Yeah, and here we come to the point where both players are down on time. Mamedyarov 3 minutes 40, and Andreikin was about the same, just about a minute more. Here Mamedyarov invested quite some time and played
check,
bishop e4 check. It's a very complicated affair, of course. You can easily see that the calculation process here is not something you can easily do with little time. It turns out that in the cold light of the engine evaluation, that bishop e4 seems to give away the advantage, but very tricky. Yeah, the computer wants to play queen to d6, just keeping white's trumps. I mean, white simply has this strong pawn, and black in this position does not really have anything better than to take. And white has a very nice dominating position here. It's not so easy to say what's the most tenacious defense here. Maybe queen to e6. after the capture. However, it's a very strong pawn here. This is the c pawn, and look at this very important tactic, intending knight takes e6. Yeah, black has a tough defense here. It's very close to being lost, to be honest. But not easy to say if it's really a loss or just a very hard defense. But knight d6 is queen to d6 is the way to go. However, bishop b4, I mean, it looks like a perfectly normal move, and it's of course very sharp and very easy to miscalculate what actually did happen. Bishop e4 check, and now queen g8. If you look at this now, you see that okay, the queen is attacked and the rook is attacking the bishop as well. So what should white do? Took on f4. This was the idea, and so far certainly expected by Mamedyarov. Andreikin played f5, setting up this pin on the queen. So does he just win a piece now? Could think that this is the case, but he has c7, the important reply, initiating or introducing this idea. Rook d8 check. Yeah, Andreikin took on e4 pretty quickly. Anything else does not make much sense.
Check.
And now rook d8 check. Yeah, and here in this position, if you want, you can treat this position as a calculation exercise. If you want to sort of get the feeling of how it is to play in an important event in a complicated position with little time, you see Andreikin has 3 minutes left. Yeah, this was pretty precise. This clock is pretty precise. I saw the original video footage. He had a little bit less, I believe, a little bit less time. Not much though, maybe 2 minutes 40 or something. If you want, let's say take yourself 2 minutes and try to calculate the consequences here, what happens. Yeah, you see that it's a check, and black only has 3 feasible moves to think about. Bishop f8, king f7, king h7. Those are the 3 moves that you need to check. The capture, of course, is just too easy. So 3 moves to consider. You have got 2 minutes. Try to work out the lines. I'll be silent for just a couple of seconds so that you can easily pause the video if you like. Alright, so I hope you took some time, because it's interesting to figure out the intricacies of this position. It turns out that let's start with the easy one. Bishop f8 is not good. It's in fact immediately losing due to queen takes h6. This is I guess easy to see. Now queen takes f8 is threatened, and black has no move, can easily resign here. So it's a king move, but where to go? To f7 or to h7? In fact, the initial idea probably is maybe king f7 for most people, because the king is covering this bishop, and it's not apparent what the problem with this move might be. This is in fact what Andreikin played, and it's the wrong one. That's actually the move that loses the game. By now we are at this in the stage where black can save himself with king h7. This is why bishop e4 check wasn't precise. Exactly the moves that were played in the game are the best ones.
Check.
And here Andreikin can secure the draw with king h7, which he didn't do. The difference, the key thing is, okay, the queen is attacked. It needs to go to d6, and black will play queen a6 here. This is perfectly logical. And there is simply a big difference to the king position on f7. Here, in being different to the f7 position of the king, here there's no rook d7 check. This is simply a useless move black takes. Here there's no check, and rook c4 makes sure that the c-pawn is not promoting. Black is relatively easily winning here. This is hanging, but
check.
It's just one check and nothing more. The problem with Andreikin's move is the following, and this happened in the game. Queen d6, Queen a6, and now
check.
Rook d7. And this is the problem, what he probably misjudged to some extent. He played King f7 relatively quickly. I just saw that here. Oh wow, that's a bad mistake. Oh. Yeah, I didn't have a clear recollection of that. I thought he took some time here. That's awful, really. You have three. I mean, it's not like criticism. I'm just feeling the pain because you have 3 minutes, and I mean that's not terribly much, but you only need here maybe like a minute or sort of feel that this is critical. And I mean, he obviously knew it was critical. It's looking at the position tells you that, but it's just here he could have saved himself, but King f7 is just running right into that, and Mamedyarov found it easily. This is nonsense, the minus something. He made the time control with a couple of seconds on the clock. Rook d7 check. Yeah, and the problem is simply if you take
check.
Yeah, you will have the queen next move. I can even first take here and then promote with an easy win. Yeah. So you need to move the king. He went to g6, and now Mamedyarov played queen c6. Simple and strong move. It prepares c8 queen, and black has no reply to that. That's it. Not difficult. If you move the king, for example, I just promote. And white is a queen up against the rook. Yeah, in the game he played queen c8. Now barely making the time control. And Mamedyarov played rook d8 here really quickly in a couple of seconds. He had 40 moves made and knew that, but he still played rook d8 quickly because it's very apparent that this is now winning with c8 coming. Note that this pin is so ugly. If black plays here, yeah, you cannot even take the rook. It's just this pin being the problem. Yeah, Andreikin played rook c4. That's a final move, and yeah, Mamedyarov just captured it. And after that, Andreikin resigned the game. Bishop c4, rook c8 is just a complete win. You get a new queen even quickly, so can easily resign this position. Yeah, a tough loss for Andreikin. I think a very tense and high quality game. I mean, I'm making about a 40 minutes video on this, and if it weren't for another game of this round, which was even more complicated, I could have easily made a longer one about this. Very complicated stuff. At the end, Mamedyarov scored an important victory for him. He really was on the ropes. Two losses in 3 rounds with 2 whites. A very really ugly score. So with the win now, it looks a little bit more bearable, just -1. Andreikin, however, is on -2 now and is on last place. So really a bad start. Still, it's clear that both players are not doing their jobs of being dark horses, as I predicted before the tournament. They seem to struggle, but still they produce interesting fighting chess. This is important. And it was very interesting to watch and analyze the game. As mentioned, easily I could have made it even more more extensive, this examination of the game. But okay, it's if people want to watch all the games with my coverage, it's long enough already. And as mentioned, there's another game that even needs more attention. All right, I hope you liked this coverage, and I'll be back tomorrow, of course, with the coverage for round 5. Thanks for watching.